Good morning, everybody. We're back on the job site and we got everything warming up. We got our machinery going. It's brisk out, but it ain't too bad. Once again, we're blessed without having all this wind here. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna try to wrap up our framing on our overhangs so that we can start installing our soffit fascia. And we try to install our soffit and our fascia before we put that drip edge up on the top of the fascia for our roof. And we're trying to do that because our gutter guy said it's a lot easier when he has a little bit of looseness in that piece of trim versus what we used to do was install that trim roof and then shove our fascia up in there. And of course, we're gonna make everything nice and tight, which is somewhat of a problem when you're trying to get your gutter up underneath that drip edge as well. You know, I always try to think about the next trade down the line, what's gonna make everything easy for everyone, because that is going to make the best product for the customer. We just got set up here on this other side. We're gonna start putting on some framing and then we'll do our soffit fascia, like I said. And then hopefully my goal is to straighten the frame and get some roof steel going up. That would be awesome. All right, so to create our overhang, we just take a 2x4 because that's the same depth of our purlin that sits on top of our truss, and we put it into that center column notch. So we had that 4-foot center notch on the tops of our laminate columns. We cut it out to set our truss right on the correct elevation, and then we extend those ears up enough that we can saddle this this tail here. And all we're gonna do is we pre-drilled these holes so we don't split anything. And then we've got a 60-penny ring shank nail, and I'll measure off the face of my column 24 inches. And that is to give us our 2-foot overhang that's gonna go on this. I always like to just double check, set your nail, make sure it's grabbed, and 24 inches. And then just for a little bit of added benefit, I'll go ahead and screw from the side. Just for a little bit of additional uplift. Now you may be asking why we don't put the tails on the truss or have our truss manufacturer do that. It's because when you're putting up a post frame, if the tails were already here, we would have to straighten the building in order to then snap a line and cut our tails to the exact depth, I guess, whether it was a 1 foot, 2 foot, 18-inch overhang, whatever. However, that's really hard to do. It's actually a lot more steps. So this way we install these to the exact dimension, which is 2 foot. Then we have the end of these tails that we can string line and straighten out right as we're starting to roof. So it's just a little bit different than stick frame. Stick frame, you go ahead and straighten all your walls, brace them, then put your trusses on. You can snap your lines and it's all good. For us, there's still movement in the building because we don't have the roof diaphragm on. We have no sheathing, no nothing. So there you go, hopefully that helped. So here on the fascia, we just plane in our fascia, screw it into the tail, and it's pretty nice and sturdy with a 2-foot overhang. So now you can see on our bevel board, or what we call our in-betweener, is we ripped this on that 412 pitch, and that's gonna, obviously because this one is installed vertical, so it's in plane with the column versus all of our purlins are on the top edge of the truss. Therefore, you know, it's not a big deal. We don't have to do anything to them because they're automatically gonna be in plane with the roof. Now you might be asking, well, why don't you do that on your fascia also? I would have to then probably do custom fascia trims because this is 5.5 and my fascia is 5.5. So I totally could do that, and I've thought about that. That would be probably not a horrible idea. I guess you got to keep improving, right? So what's nice about doing post frame construction this way is that your purlins will make your overhang for you. Whenever we're doing a 2-foot overhang, we'll use a 20-foot purlin because we got a 16-foot truss spacing. We can have overlap on both sides. We get that 2-foot overlap hanging out this way. That's gonna give us our 2-foot overhang. And then we've got a good overlap on our first purlin connection. If we go to a 1-foot overhang, we only need to use an 18-foot purlin. And then one of the key things on, I think, doing your fascia is how it's all connected. And I'm not a big fan of lap joints unless it just makes sense. So I'll show you how we do a detail on our end fascia when we don't have any framing behind our joint. So this here shows how we run our end fascia. You can see we just ran this long. It is a little bit tight, but what I'm gonna do here, so I'm just gonna line them up, take my square, make a nice line. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take another piece of scrap blocking, prep screws here real quick. Now you might be thinking, well, why not just cut it to fit right on the joint? I don't think that's a really strong connection, and that requires 2 cuts. So we gotta cut this guy to land on the joint, and then we'll have to cut this guy either on this end or the other end where it's dying. And the way it is now, we can just not have to take any tape measures and find accurate dimensions. We can just kind of run it. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go ahead and screw this board into this guy. And then we'll go ahead and try to, we'll just lift this guy up. Make sure our top is money. Oh, that moved. Do that again with a different screw. And so now we got a nice tight connection, and we got a little sag because we didn't screw this way down there. It's actually screwed about 8 foot away. That way it wasn't so tight on this other board. So now what we can do is we can either lift this whole thing up or use another little post frame trick and use leverage. Because in the post frame world, man, large pieces of wood are never perfect. They're never exactly where you want them. So sometimes you just have to move it. And as long as you spend the time to accurately measure and cut things, when you put it where it's supposed to be, then things are usually going to be pretty good. So we just finished up all of our fascia on this building. Now we're ready to, so I should say sub fascia, but now we're ready to start doing our soffit fascia in preparation for our roof. This detail right here is one that a lot of people ask about, how we do our soffits here at the corner where the eave and gable come together. And we've already snapped a line. We did that when we had the truss on the ground. That way we don't have to do it now. And that's gonna determine the bottom of this trim. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it down to my fascia that's already been installed. I'm gonna get it lined up with that snap line right here. And then I'm just going to trace right there. So now I've got this line here. I'm just gonna basically connect it out. Take our first piece of soffit, slide it in there. That's our F and J channel you hear me talk about. And the reason I call it an F and a J is because from the edge, or from the end, it looks like a letter F, but it's got this J channel, and that's gonna accept our steel that comes up on the end wall. Soffit itself is like extremely easy. The only thing that's really challenging, and it's not challenging, but you have to make sure you have your snap line in the right spot, and that's so that this can be level. And really all we do there is we've got a 2x6 fascia, a 2x4 purlin, so we know that the top of this trim needs to be 2 inches down from the top of the truss. So this is a 3¼ inch trim. in total. So we go 3 1/4 plus 2 inches, and that's 5 1/4. So we hook the top of our truss when it's on the ground and it's on the pile, and we just snap a line from the bottom to the top. Makes it really easy. This is the 18 gauge stapler from DeWalt, and it works really well. So now that I have this section of soffit and F&J on, I can put my fascia trim. You can see that we wrapped around the fascia trim on the eave, and with the gable, all I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna cut a 412. So just take my square here and go to my common 412 pitch. And now all I'm gonna do is, I got that 412 pitch. I'm just gonna cap this fascia and I'm gonna slide it down till we're flush here. There's gonna be one more trim that comes over the roof steel, over this gable end, and it's gonna get screwed through the face of this. All right, now with this detail here, really what I'm trying to do, I'm not a fan of the bird box. Sorry about the movement on the lift. I don't really like it when the eave soffit comes all the way out and then it's like squared off. I just think that looks kind of ridiculous. So I'm gonna cut a piece of trim that's gonna cover this up, make that detail look all nice and pretty. There, so that cleans that up real nice. And then when my steel is on the sides, there'll be another piece of trim that goes right up here. So keeps the birds, keeps the weather, whatever, right out of here. Yeah, this detail will get cleaned up real nice with our corner trim, but that's not for a little while yet. Let's see, 32 3/8 of an inch. What I like to do is just get this piece in the slot, push it back, find out right where it's supposed to bend, and then I'm just going to use the rail of my scissor lift to break that bend in. Now whenever I do these peak gable trims on the building, I always think about where people are going to look at it, where the sun's shining, shadow lines. So this is south, most of the sunlight will come this way, most of the people are on this side because that's his property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this side first, and I'll then overlap this side so it always looks like it's a nice clean joint. So what I do when I'm going to underlap a piece of trim, I put my 412 pitch on like normal, just mark the top, then I square down from that line, and that's what I will leave underneath. See how I drive my screw in, then I reverse it back out, and then I slowly put it in. What I'm doing is I'm drilling my hole, but then I'm taking the pressure off the steel so it doesn't pucker, and then I'm lightly bringing it back to where I want that finished look to be. 29, just under 3/4. Now for this one, because it's going to be my overlap, I'm going to mark my 412 pitch, and then I'll cut right on that line. Tell you what, man, it was pretty chilly this morning. Thought it was gonna be one of them days where you didn't want to go home, but you wanted to go home, you know. Looks like it turned out to be a pretty decent afternoon. We were able to stick it out, get all this soffit fascia done, which is great because I don't really like installing roof towards the end of the day. I like to start installing our roof at the beginning of the day. It's usually when it's most calm and predictable. It's when the sun gets up that sometimes it gets a little iffy. So now you can see I've got my 412 pitch. I'll open up this hem. There's this bald eagle that just landed over here. There's really no tricks to soffit fascia. I mean, it's super easy. I think it looks super clean when done well. And it's a pretty easy task. So end of the day here, we got all of our soffit fascia up around the building, which is awesome because tomorrow, first thing, we can straighten it out and start putting our roof steel on. We also got overhead doors blocked. We've got our chains up. That's going to help hold it down, and we will utilize those to straighten everything out tomorrow. So I'll try to take you through that. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you either hit that subscribe button so you can follow along, or if you are subscribed, thank you, hit that bell so you're notified when I drop another video. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of here, clean everything up, and there's a pretty killer sunset going on, so maybe I'll take the drone up and get some killer, I don't know, drone shots. I like that stuff.